Custodians to mankind's knowledge, the robed robotic priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus oversee the fabrication, maintenance, and repair of every device crafted by the Imperium. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, doubt is as alien as the Tau, Eldar, and Tyranids that assail mankind. Whether in matters of machinery or warfare, their plans are meticulously crafted, passed down to their semi-mechanical followers to enact the Omnissiah's will. Their origins lie back with the Dark Age of mankind. Long before the Imperium of Man would form, nuclear civil wars and natural disasters would turn the previously terraformed Mars back into a harsh, irradiated wasteland. Its atmosphere turned toxic and unbreathable. The survivors of the wars lived underground, heavily reliant on their machinery and technology to keep them alive. Banding together, these pockets of life became the Cult Mechanicus. To them, life became synonymous with their technology, humanity's survival with the bounties of their machine god. After the Emperor of Mankind unified Terra under his singular banner, he travelled to Mars. There, he descended to the surface upon a gargantuan craft, landing on Olympus Mons before Knights and Titans. I can understand why some on Mars would come to believe the Emperor to be the Omnissiah, as when he left his craft, he approached the Knight Ares Lictor and placed his hand upon the construct's knee. With a simple spoken command, the machine's damaged joint healed thyself, bringing the pilot to bow his mount before the Emperor, knowing him to be the machine god himself. Whether or not they believed the Emperor to be their Omnissiah, the Cult Mechanicum signed the Treaty of Olympus Mons. This document avoided a war of conquest between the budding Imperium and the Techno-Empire that lay on Mars, instead creating a mutually beneficial partnership that has lasted through to current day 40k. This treaty granted political autonomy to the Mechanicum of Mars, as well as an exception to the Imperial Truth, so that the Cult Mechanicus' adherents could still continue to practice their faith. The Imperium would provide navigators and astropaths to the Mechanicum, so that it could continue its sacred quest for knowledge across the stars, and stretch out to found new forge worlds throughout the galaxy. In exchange, the Mechanicum would supply the Imperium of Man with the weapons, starships, materials and technicians required to initiate the Emperor's Great Crusade to unite all of the human-settled galaxy beneath the banner of the Imperium. All in all, it was an ideal outcome for the Mechanicum. They now had control of the technology of two empires, and had the freedom to seek out more lost pieces of technology and knowledge, all in the name of their machine god. During the Horus Heresy, the Mechanicum was split into its own civil war on which side to back. Ultimately, those that sided with Horus retreated with the rest of the traitors into the Eye of Terror, becoming known as the Dark Mechanicum. Those that kept with the Imperium of Man, however, rebranded after the Emperor began his big sit on the Golden Throne, becoming known as the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their leader, the Fabricator General of Mars, being given a seat upon the High Council of Terror as recognition for their loyalty and for their continued aid to the Imperium as a whole, but also for their endless work in keeping the Golden Throne systems maintained. Much like the Inquisitors of the Imperium, the Adeptus Mechanicus is not a stranger to declaring heresy, in their case, tech heresy. Each device and schematic, from the process for casting teaspoons to the cannons on a battle tank, are a gift of knowledge from their machine god. As such, the core dogma of the AdMech is repetition, with invention and innovation being deemed as a slight against the Omnissiah, and prideful that a simple lowly tech priest might know better than the great machine god. In the rare instances that one of these adapted patterns produce greater results with calm or helpful machine spirits, it is not uncommon for this new creation to be kept by the AdMech, sweeping the act of heresy under the rug with the excuse that this new invention is actually just an old schematic that was lost and just reinvented under the passive guidance of the Omnissiah. A famous example of one who flaunts this rule, Archmagos Belisarius Cool, does so with Primarch Robote Gulliman's backing, claiming that
the Omnissiah knows my work, even if others are too blind to accept an opus of genius.
this desperate desire to hoard information and technology is exemplified not only in their willingness to overlook heresy for the sake of gaining better technology, but also in their army structure. Each Forge world lacks a global standing army, with each major tech priest on the planet instead having their own private fighting force of machinery, Skitarii, and other engines of war. Whilst in times of planetary danger, these forces can fall under the command of the Fabricator General of the Forge world, at all other times, these destructive and radioactive forces are private armies with singular masters. As such, the cybernetically enhanced warriors of the Skitarii legions may differ in appearance drastically from leadership to leadership, with each tech priest modifying their troops in whatever way they see best fit. Some are fashioned into Sicarian, warrior clades comprised of hyper-aggressive and sinister combatants, whereas others may resemble robotic guardsmen. They are tools to be employed in the destruction of mankind's enemies, or any who would threaten the Omnissiah's will. Even the death of each of these warriors feeds back data to their commanders of the enemy's strengths and weaknesses, feeding the grim computations of the Adeptus Mechanicus' strategy. An example of this cold and cruel efficiency when it comes to matters of war, Forge World Lucius successfully defended in a war of attrition when invaded by a splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Leviathan. With the majority of their manufactorums lying beneath the surface of this hollowed world, the mechanized armies of the Forge World took to the surface to battle the Xenos invaders. As their forces were taken down by the Hive Fleet, swarms of servo skulls collected up the cybernetics, left behind by the Tyranids' devouring of their biological parts. Carrying these components back beneath the surface, more troops were outfitted with these second-hand limb replacements and sent out to war. With very little biomass being offered by the seemingly endlessly recyclable troops of the Forge world, the Hive Fleet was forced to feed upon itself to generate replacement broods, and slowly this attrition saw victory for the refurbished robots of Lucius. My favourite of the war engines of the Adeptus Mechanicus are the Einstrider engines. These complex devices have a servitor permanently integrated into their systems, their motive engines carrying dragoons and ballistari into battle with their stilt limbs. At its core lies a perpetual motion dynamo designed by a long-deceased tech priest. Whilst the Mechanicus is able to recreate more of these grand designs, they are unsure of the exact workings of the engine once assembled. As such, the Einstrider engines are required to continuously move, each step ensuring the generator within them continues to operate. These chicken walkers are led in herds around the Forge worlds and transported from warzone to warzone on transport ships with treadmill-like floors. The Admech fear that should they halt and their generator shut down, that they lack the knowledge required to restart them. This paradoxical control of knowledge leaves the Adeptus Mechanicus being one of the most technologically advanced forces in the galaxy, but they also lack critical information considered basic to even our standards today. Attempting to recreate the immense knowledge base of mankind that existed during the Golden Age, their databanks must appear as a completed 10,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, missing half the pieces. As such, it's easy to understand why they focus so much on ensuring no knowledge is lost, sticking to the safety of repetition to avoid any more pieces of the puzzle from disappearing while they search for the rest. From the lowliest monotask servitor to the fabricated General of Mars, it would be rare to find any amongst the Forge worlds who did not sport any mechanical implants or replacements. To them, they see the flesh they are born with as weak, craving instead the strength and certainty of steel. Such are the extents that some are modified by, that they are able to withstand harsher conditions than their original human forms. This suits their work in their heavily polluted Forge worlds, but can be hazardous to their Astra Militarum or Adeptus Sororitas allies, the flesh-reliant forces of the Emperor falling to the radiation emitting from the heavily modified foot soldiers of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Whilst the more pious of humanity may see the adaptation of their bodies to be heresy against the Imperial Creed, the Admech and their own religion instead are fanatic about their additions, seeing themselves as stepping closer to being one with their machine god, aspiring to the purity of the blessed machine. A critical cog in the Imperial engine of conquest, the Adeptus Mechanicus are a really interesting faction to read on. They exist somewhat outside of the Imperium of Man, but their closeness still ties them into the stories following the forces of the Emperor. Their model range on the tabletop and their overall theme and aesthetic almost feel alien at times, but still cling true to the rest of the Imperium's style, the Admech signature literally marked on the weapons of war that are brought upon the enemies of mankind. Add to that the constant plays for power that the tech priests act on one another, and widely varied forge worlds that feed the Imperium, and you've got a unique feeling faction with plenty of stories to tell. Those will have to wait for the next time we visit the Adeptus Mechanicus, however, when we drill down deeper into the major forge worlds and what makes them so interesting. If you've enjoyed the video and don't want to miss our return to the Admech, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps me to continue what we're doing. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.